Hello, welcome to Mike's Mets Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pashota, and a happy Tuesday to you. So last night, the Mets began their three-game series against the Atlanta Braves, and they began it in great fashion with a complete blowout of the Braves, 10-4. And this game really was contested in the early innings of the game, but the Mets would break free and then would keep the game in their favor for the majority of it. So we ultimately ended up with a 10-4 victory. Phil Bickford would get the win coming out of the bullpen. And the box score, final run total shows, this was not a well pitched game on either side. It was a little bit surprising with the Atlanta Braves just because they had obviously the superior matchup with a much more competent pitcher on the mound. The Mets had, of course, David Peterson, and this kind of played out like a typical Peterson start, as it has been all season long. And we've just grown to expect that Peterson's just going to kind of give a solid, if somewhat unspectacular, performance every time out. Alan Winans, I honestly don't know how to pronounce his name. Alan Winans was the pitcher on record for that start, and he was the one charged for the majority for the earned runs given. So he ultimately finished. Peterson actually outpitched him in this performance. Not that it's really saying anything, but Peterson would ultimately finish that game with 4 2/3 innings pitched, 7 hits, 4 earned runs. Again, this really plays out like a typical Peterson performance, and it's one that we've seen many, many times over the course of the season. Of course, the 4 2/3 innings pitched, very typical. He just throws a lot of pitches, and if he's not really feeling the stuff, which has unfortunately been the case for much of the year, then you're just going to get a lot of pitches thrown. He threw 93 pitches in 4 2/3 innings. It's not a recipe for success. And it felt like this was going to play out like a lot of Braves games the Mets have played over the course of the season, where the Mets have a starter not go deep. The Braves pick apart the bullpen. They start hitting home runs. All of a sudden, what would turn out to be a close game might also ultimately become a Braves blowout. Not in this case, actually. The bullpen of the Mets, which is much maligned and everyone is largely views as probably the team's worst attribute, actually was able to hold on and pitch quite the game. It was actually pretty surprising. Bickford, I mentioned, got the win. He would pitch an inning, a third, allow 1 hits, have no earned runs, strike out 3. And then we would have a combination of Sam Coonrod, Adam Bonavino, and Drew Smith combining for 3 shutout innings against a team that is largely viewed as the best team in baseball this season. I think that's pretty fair to say that the Braves are got to be the heavy favorites to win and potentially take a World Series this year. We've seen. I kind of thought it was going to happen last year, honestly, with the matchups that they were going to have in the postseason, and if it might happen for the Braves that season. Ultimately, did not. But they have to be considered one of the runaway favorites this year, just because of the amazing offense that they have. And that offense was actually pretty much neutered in this game. It was actually a little surprising. We, of course, saw home run hitting from the Braves, because that's what the Braves do. The Braves, if there's one thing you can sum up that team in, is they hit the ever-loving hell out of the baseball, and they like hitting it over the fence. They have 237 home runs this season. That is number 1 with a bullet in the NL this year. And in a season where we've seen a lot of power, they just have a ton of it. Between Matt Olson, Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley. They are loaded. And Sean Murphy. They have had incredible amount of success this year. Everything's going right for them. They've had no real major issues, other than perhaps their starting rotation has been somewhat sloppy as of late, particularly with Spencer Strider, who's had some trouble. And Strider, strikes at the world, but sometimes can't really put some guys away, and has given up more than a few issues. Has given up more than a few home runs over the course of the season. So let's go into the season for the Mets here. All right, so let's go into the game here for the Mets. We saw early on the Mets would grab some runs themselves through some home runs, and this was just like I mean, when you go to the Braves Stadium, there's just going to be a lot of home run hitting. It is not a bandbox, but just a place where the ball just like kind of travels out. It is an absolute launching pad, and everyone just hits home runs here. And we saw 2 early home runs for the Mets from players that you would not expect to be such huge factors of the team. Based on the opening day rosters, of which they were not on. So it was DJ Stewart and Rafael Ortega homering, and both those names will not like ring out to most people. Stewart a little bit more than Ortega. Stewart is in the middle of a stretch right now where it's like Tommy Pham at different stretches of the season where all of a sudden DJ Stewart looks like the best player on the team, and you're like, where's DJ Stewart been all this time? And you're like, he's been a journeyman, major leaguer, where he's been up and down on the Baltimore Orioles for his entire career. He's been in the Mets minor league system this season. Was actually doing a great job in the Mets minor league system, which I think I've outlined before, when they called him up and he hit his home run. I think his first home run of the season earlier this year, and he had a batting change-up revelation while he was playing in AAA, and he went with it. It's apparently given him a lot more power at the plate. He's hitting the ball a lot easier. He's just swinging faster, and he's just a new motion can really change some people. And he really fixed it. He really seems to have found his swing, and all of a sudden he's hit 4 home runs in his last 5 games now. So he's in the middle of an incredible power stretch. Rafael Ortega, nobody should know, unless you're like a really a tuned baseball fan. He's been up and down in the major leagues. Like if DJ Stewart's like a journeyman, Ortega's like a super journeyman, and he's just been up and down his entire career with every team that he's played on. He's a outfielder who they'll call up for like a few games, but doesn't really strike out as anything more than like a bench player. And he had like a moment in 2021 with the Cubs. I was looking through his stats that year, and I was like, oh wow, he actually was pretty good that year, and wasn't able to follow up the next season. And soon enough, he was back down in the minor leagues and everything. So Ortega was called up earlier this year, and he hasn't done really anything, but got the start in this game. And came through in a big moment. Hit a 2-run home run. Mets go up 3-0. Now, of course, the Braves would come back, and surprisingly, it was not the people you would expect to be the huge factors in this game for the Braves. It was not Matt Olson, who was 0 for 2. And walked twice, but didn't really do anything. And then Austin Riley had no impact. Ronald Acuna had a couple of hits, but actually they're just singles, and didn't really do anything in this game. So you expect with the Braves insane lineup where they have just an overwhelming amount of offense. It was actually the guys that didn't come through for them consistently. Austin Riley, Matt Olson, both those guys missed big moments. So did Sean Murphy. They were all combined over in this game, and that was ultimately probably what kept the Mets in this game, was keeping those guys from doing any major damage. As well as the Mets coming through a lot of base hits in this game. Jeff McNeil will go 3 for 5. Pete Alonso, after that torrid stretch in St. Louis where he was just hitting home runs every game. No home runs this game, a little surprising. He's in Atlanta, the launching pad, as I just mentioned. No home runs from him today, but he would go 2 for 5. And the big shot would come later in this game from Francisco Lindor, who would hit a 3-run home run that would seal the deal for the Mets. But going back to the Braves would come back after going down 3-0, ultimately going up 4-3 thanks to two Marcell Ozuna home runs. And then in the top of the fifth, things really went sideways for the Braves starter. Again, I'm not going to be able to say his name. Winans? I have no idea how to say his name. But he would be tagged for a lot of base hits and a lot of runs would go up. A lot of it will also be charged to Brad Hand, who came in that game, in that inning, and would also get hit. And so it was ultimately a really unfortunate performance for the Braves starter. The Mets would come through big situations. McNeil coming out through with an RBI single, and then Pete Alonso with an RBI single, and then Dingle Vogelbach RBI single. So they just kept coming through with big hits with men on scoring position, something that's eluded the Mets for much of this year. Finally, DJ Stewart would sacrifice with a bunt, scoring Pete Alonso, and that was the final run of that inning. So the Mets were all of a sudden up 10-4, and then next inning, top of the sixth, Francisco Lindor would come to the plate and crush a 3-run home run just over the fence in left field and or left center field, and that was a huge moment. Lindor again coming through in a big situation and put the final nail in the coffin for the Braves that's in this game. And as a Met fan, it's satisfying to see, just because I'll watch, as I said before, many games with the Mets and Braves, and it's just been no contest, really. I mean, the Braves have pretty much made the Mets, their bitch the entire year. And this isn't really anything new. We've kind of grown to expect it, even dating back to last season, where, the Braves were just coming through in all these matchups late in the year against the Mets, and ultimately would seal the Mets' fate in those critical series last year. But coming into this game, the Mets were not expected to win it. I think this was probably the pitching matchup that worked out probably the best in their favor. Potentially Game 3 also, with Charlie Morton on the mound, and the Mets throwing sorry, I just blanked on who's the Game 3 starter in this game. Who is this? Jose Quintana is going to be the Game 3 starter. So I felt like that was a matchup that might work out for them also, being able to negate Matt Olson's power, hopefully with Quintana being the lefty. So I was factoring on that, maybe working on the Mets series, but I was not really expecting the Mets to take Game 1, particularly with Peterson on the mound. Game 2, kind of a throw-up. I would assume the Braves are probably going to take that one also. The pitching matchup definitely in their favor. The Mets have Tyler McGill on the mound, while the Braves are going to throw Bryce Elder. And it's a little surprising with the Braves. The Mets are on a odd hot stretch right now, where the offense has finally kind of kicked into gear, and it's guys who they've really needed to kind of get on track. Finally have gotten on track for the last week. So, Like Vogelbach's been coming through in situations. Pete Alonso's homering in an incredible stretch. Lindor's playing great. Even McNeil has been coming through some base hits lately also. And the result of it all is the Mets offense sort of humming for the first time in a while, and they've been coming through. And you look at it as the Mets just kind of beating up on, the Pittsburgh Pirates and the St. Louis Cardinals, two teams that are way out of it in terms of the postseason expectations, but to absolutely lay one on the Atlanta Braves in Game 1 of this series in Atlanta, pretty surprising. It was great to see, and I'll as a Met fan, I'll take a lot of joy in it. It was nice to kind of beat back the Braves for once, and kind of give them a taste of their own medicine, because the Braves have just been absolutely beating the ever-loving shit out of everybody that they faced all season long. And as I mentioned, just an absolute juggernaut of an offense. So to do it right back to them was great to see. And just watching Lindor come up with a 3-run home run was really nice to watch. And it was just a great win. I've really enjoyed it. Even making it better was the bullpen holding everything together. The Braves just really kind of let one go. So they really could have come back and won that game if they had everyone kind of in the right hitting situation, I guess. Things just didn't work out, and worked out great in the Mets' favor. So we'll see how the rest of the series plays out. I did want to pitch one thing coming up later this month, which is I'm going to be doing the first ever video episode where I'm going to be talking to the camera. I'll have a camera set up for my setup here, and we will be doing a video podcast episode as opposed to the straight audio, which we've been doing all season long, all year long, and so look forward to doing that, and it'll be fun to kind of change things up. So do look forward to that and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The links will be coming later in this video, so please check those out. And we've loved to see the Met win here. I'm looking forward to potentially the good times going by. I'm being very cautious in my optimism. There's no situation where the Mets are going to make the postseason. Let's be very clear about that. Their two best pitchers are Kodai Senga and Jose Quintana, who have pitched really well, particularly lately. But they have nothing really after that. They have Cookie Carrasco and then David Peterson and Tyler McGill, and the three of those guys have an ERA combined, I think, of like 6, somewhere around there. And so that's not really a rotation that's going to make any kind of waves. And as pleasing as it would be to see the Mets kind of like ride this like incredible stretch, like, and they win a bunch of games in August, and all of a sudden they're back in the wild card hunt. I'm going to temper my optimism and say that this is a nice stretch. I'd certainly love them to kind of like throw some dirt in the eye of the Atlanta Braves here and kind of take 2 out of 3 in the Braves home stadium would be a nice little FU to the Atlanta just for beating our brains out all season long. So looking forward to that if it does happen, and we'll see if it does. If it does not, that's okay. But this was a great win. I really enjoyed watching the Mets kind of take it to the Braves here as a complete opposite as much of the season is gone. So looking forward to more of it if we could potentially see it in Game 2 and taking 2 straight from the Braves. Wouldn't be the worst thing. I'd certainly sleep a lot better knowing that the Braves lost 2 out of 3 in their own home stadium. Thank you for listening to Mike's Mets Podcast. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Finally, please also follow the podcast Twitter, which is Mike's Mets Pod, all one word. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Let's go, Mets.